and I was just looking at the numbers this morning, actually. And the first thing to note is that COVID is really very much part of UK life, probably not far off endemic stage. That's where there's a baseline presence in the population and a good degree of community immunity that makes those that presence relatively benign. So right now in the UK, we're running at about 40,000 new cases per day. That compares to 122 per day in New Zealand. Most of those, however, are pretty benign. So there's only 7,000 in hospital, and of that is fewer than 1,000 who are in intensive care. So it seems like the vaccination program has worked. Most of the presence right now is the Delta variant. Increasingly, we're seeing the Omicron variant crop up, though early evidence on that seems to be that its symptoms are rather more mild. And I thought, before I looked this morning, I thought that the UK was slightly further ahead on its vaccination program than New Zealand, but not so. The numbers don't lie. So first vaccines in the UK, 51 million, that's 76% of the population versus 77% in New Zealand. 2 doses, so fully vaccinated, 70% in the UK, 73% in New Zealand. We're slightly ahead on the booster, so 30% of the population has had the booster. I've still got my Moderna hangover. I had my booster shot on Sunday, so feeling a bit groggy still, and it's about 2.4% in New Zealand. So actually, vaccination-wise, there's not a big gap. If anything, New Zealand's slightly ahead. What's true in the UK is a couple of things. One, it's very much a fact of life. Most people have experienced it. My youngest son's had it twice. My wife's had it. I think my eldest son has had it, but he's never been tested positive. I'm the only one in the family that's escaped, and that's just our little nuclear family. So pretty much everyone knows somebody who's had it, in some cases quite severely. And also, as you kind of mentioned, Phil, over the last 2 years or so, almost 2 years anyway, probably around 9 months of that, we've been in various states of lockdown. Not true at the moment. Boris has just reintroduced mask wearing if you're going into shops, but all of the restaurants and bars are open. We can travel. There's a few additional restrictions as we cross borders, depending on the country. I'm going to France next week, for example. I need to test before I go. But it's relatively straightforward. So I guess the conclusion of all of that is it's just become a way of life, for better or for worse. In the UK, the population is very much acclimatized to it, and we're learning as a nation to live with it, as are the businesses. And to your question on business, we've been through various waves. Of course, in the first lockdown back in March 2020, pretty much every business went into remote working. For Google, that was relatively easy. We do all of our meetings already on video. We use Google Meet, not Zoom. And so that transition was pretty normal and pretty easy. We gave each of our employees $1,000 to spend on home equipment so that they were well set up, not balancing on an ironing board with insufficient microphones and speakers and lighting and that sort of thing. And we kind of fell into the rhythm of it. And there's been loads of innovations that we can talk about if it's interesting along the way, Phil. It's very much the norm. I think it's going to be the norm for everyone. Right now, I mean, Google's offices are in different states depending on the location. Obviously, in India, for example, they're pretty shut down. Here in the UK, they're open. I'm actually not at a Google office today. This is my welcome to Google Home. This is my home office, but I could go in if I wanted to. I just fill in a little questionnaire and I can access the office normally. In the UK, we're bringing people back to the office, or at least planning to, subject to where this variant takes us, in about the middle of January. It may be slightly later than that, depending on Omicron. But that will be on a 3-day work week in the office. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday in the office, Monday and Friday, if you want to use the office, that's fine. But otherwise you can work from anywhere. We'll allow our people to work from anywhere in the world 4 weeks a year. So if they wanted to put themselves through the torture of working in the Southern Hemisphere on that time zone, they could do that. But it opens up new possibilities. During the height of COVID, for example, I've got about 10 people in my direct team. I think we're up to 60 or 70% of them were working in other countries. I had one in Pakistan, I had one in France, I had one in Spain, one in the US. So they sort of dispersed, one in Germany, and that became better. And I think also, Phil, the experience of working from home has been different, right? I'm very fortunate. In my setup, I've got a proper office at home, but that's not the case for many of our people, particularly our younger Googlers, as we call them, who may be in a flat share situation. In many cases, they share a flat with somebody who works at Facebook, for example. So that's a very difficult working environment. Others have young children, and it's super difficult to balance both, and we've sort of made accommodations for that. So I see a spectrum, Phil, ranging from people like me who would be perfectly happy and fine to work remotely, forever, and others who really miss that office environment, A, for the concentration value of it, but B, also because it's a social space. And for Google in particular, what's driving our policy there is that our offices have always been sort of fun, playful places where casual collisions happen and where innovation and collaboration happens. We design the offices very much with that in mind. It's very, very much part of the bone marrow, in terms of culture. So in our world, we felt it was right to incorporate offices in the sort of post-COVID or new normal, whereas others, including in the tech sector, have said if you want to work remotely forever, you can do so. A much higher emphasis on experiential spaces. A few points for those of you who may not be familiar. So the building, as Phil says, was commissioned before COVID. Great timing, huh? But it's, I think it's a decision, honestly, that we would make today. Right now, our sort of 5,000 or 6,000 people are spread across 5 campuses, 5 buildings. So the idea is to coalesce in one enclave, which is the King's Cross area. It's the area where the Eurostar comes in if you're coming from Paris or Belgium or the Netherlands these days. And it's become a bit of a sort of rejuvenated tech hub. We do have a building there already. Most of our engineers that are based in London sit there. Our DeepMind business, the AI business, is based there. And we're building a new building that's become colloquially known as the landscraper, because it's as long as the Shard is tall. It's an enormous building. It will have theoretical capacity for 7,000 people when it's done. We won't put that many in. We'll probably put about 4,000 in, so allow a bit more sort of space and oxygen inside the building. It's got a park and a running track on the top of the building. There are, I think, 7 floors, but only 3 of them are structural floors. The other floors hang from the other floors, so it's there's a lot of sort of open space. There's a lot of new age building material. So the wooden frames for 10-meter window panes are all wood, a composite wood that has a strength that's better than steel, particularly in a fire, and is much more sustainable. So there's a number of innovations. And if you've ever been into a Google office, although they all look different, you'll notice a couple of things. One is there's loads and loads of spaces that are not obviously desk spaces, soft furnishings, couches, hammocks in some cases, In our Victoria office, we've even converted a London double-decker bus into an office that you can kind of go in and use as a meeting room. In Zurich, there's a gondola. So loads of sort of playful collaboration spaces, as opposed to sort of desk spaces. There's a sense of hijinks around the place, right? It's a visually stimulating environment that just makes you want to smile. And, you know, we find that brings out the best in people.